Hey there, and welcome back. I think we've all felt it, that information overload's like, "Yeah, trying to drink from a fire hose, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you just want to learn faster and better and actually remember it all.
right.
So today, we're diving into some science-backed strategies to do just that.
And the cool thing is these strategies work no matter what you're learning, like a new language or
Mm,
some complex skill or just trying to keep up in your field.
exactly. Our source material today is this YouTube video from the Learn English podcast. It's called Tips from Science to Learn English Faster. Now, before you think wrong podcast, trust me, the stuff they're talking about, it applies to anything you want to learn.
It does.
So our mission is to pull out the most powerful takeaways, the actionable stuff, to help you supercharge your learning.
It all starts with understanding how our brains are wired.
Mm-hmm.
The video uses this cool analogy of the brain being a bridge builder.
Ooh, I love analogies. So how does that apply to actually, learning something?
Think of each new piece of information like a separate island.
Mm.
So when you learn something new, you're building a bridge between that island and what you already know.
Okay.
The more you use that bridge,
Uh-huh.
the stronger it gets.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just reading it or hearing it. It's about making those connections, building those bridges. Like they talk about practicing a guitar song. The more you play it, the more automatic it becomes.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of active learning comes in. It's not just sitting there passively reading or listening. You have to engage with it.
Right.
Ask questions, make connections, even try explaining it to someone else.
Oh, yeah.
All of these help solidify those connections in your brain.
I've definitely noticed when I try to explain something to someone else, it forces me to really think it through and understand it on a deeper level. It's like suddenly it all clicks.
Absolutely. And there's research that backs this up. The video talks about this Harvard study, where the students who used these active learning methods scored way higher on tests compared to the ones just using traditional methods.
Wow. So think about a time when you really got a concept versus just kind of skimming over it. Were you actively engaged, taking notes, asking questions, maybe arguing about it with a friend? Those are the times when it sticks, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of things that stick, or things that don't, let's talk about cramming.
Yes. The all-nighter fueled by coffee and panic. We've all been there. But does it actually work?
Sadly, no. As tempting as it is, the science just doesn't support it as a good way to learn. You might remember some facts for the test, but long-term, no.
So what's the alternative? This video suggests something much more brain-friendly called spaced repetition.
Instead of trying to cram it all in at once, the idea is to review the material at different times. So say you learn something new today, you'd review it again tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later, and so on.
So each time you come back to it, you're strengthening those connections, right?
Exactly. And the cool thing is, this is how our brains naturally form memories anyway. Each time you recall something, you're making those neural pathways stronger.
Oh.
And there are tons of tools to help with this, from flashcards to apps like Quizlet and Anki.
I love that they emphasize not rushing. There's a line in the video, being hasty doesn't make you smarter. It's a reminder that learning takes time, and it's okay to slow down. Let your brain do its thing.
It's so true. We live in a world where everything's got to be fast and efficient. But with learning, sometimes slowing down is actually the key to speeding up your progress.
Okay, so we've got active learning, spaced repetition. What's next on the list? Because let's be real, most of us could use a little help in the focus department.
You're telling me.
Right.
Distractions are everywhere. But there's this technique that can help us reclaim our focus. It's called the Pomodoro technique.
Okay, tell me more. Is it some complicated thing?
No, it's super simple.
Okay.
You work in focused bursts of 25 minutes, followed by a 5-minute break. And repeat.
So short bursts of focus, then a little break. That makes sense. It's got to be better than forcing yourself to focus for hours on end.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, it works with your brain's natural rhythm.
Right.
Attention and rest.
Right.
Working in these shorter intervals helps you avoid mental fatigue.
Oh.
It actually makes you more productive overall.
It's like work smarter, not harder.
Right, exactly.
Instead of pushing through exhaustion, you're working with how your brain actually functions. I like that.
And you can adjust the intervals too. Some people prefer 50 minutes on, 10 minutes off. It's all about finding what works best for you.
So listener, think about your own work style. Could you see yourself using the Pomodoro technique? Maybe give it a try for a week and see how it affects your focus.
I think you'll be surprised how much you get done.
Okay, I'm sold. This is making me want to shake things up in my own learning routine.
That's a great segue to our next point. The video talks about using different learning methods, like mixing it up.
Mixing things up sounds great, but I often struggle with how to actually do that effectively. Like, how do I choose the right mix for a specific subject? Say, I'm trying to learn a new programming language.
That's a great question. And you know there's no one-size-fits-all answer. But the key is to engage different parts of your brain and learn the information from different angles. So with your programming example, you could combine reading tutorials with watching videos, working through exercises, and even joining online forums to talk about it with other people.
So finding that sweet spot between challenge and keeping things interesting. Right.
Exactly. And remember, the more engaged your brain is,
Yeah.
the better you'll learn and remember.
This is really feeling like we're unlocking some secrets to learning, you know? What else does this video tell us about maximizing our brain power?
Well, this one might sound obvious, but it's sleep.
Oh yeah, sleep. We all know it's important, but why exactly is it so essential for learning?
Sleep isn't just about resting our bodies. It's when our brains actually consolidate everything we've learned. It's like hitting the save button.
Ah, that's a great way to put it. So what's actually happening in our brains while we sleep?
Our brains are replaying and reinforcing all the new connections we made. It's like organizing all the files, making the information easier to access later.
That explains why I always feel so much sharper after a good night's sleep.
Precisely.
Like my brain has finally made sense of it all.
Exactly. And here's a helpful tip from the video. Studying right before bed can actually help you remember things better.
Wait, really? So instead of scrolling through my phone before bed, I should crack open a textbook?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let your brain do its thing overnight. You'll be surprised how much easier it is to remember things
Oh.
after good sleep.
Okay, I'm definitely adding pre-sleep study session to my routine. It's like giving my brain a little bedtime story, but instead of fairy tales, it gets knowledge.
And speaking of stories, this last point is all about being curious, like a detective.
Ooh, this is my thing. I love asking questions.
Well, good. But curiosity isn't just a personality trait. It actually has a neurological basis. When you're curious, your brain triggers this seeking response, which makes you more open to new information.
So it's not just absorbing information, it's about being curious and wanting to learn more.
Exactly. It's about making learning an adventure.
I love that. It's like every learning experience is a mystery to be solved.
Right. And that feeling of discovery, that's what really makes it stick.
Wow, we've covered a lot already. This has been so energizing. I'm ready to put all this to use.
Me too.
Wow.
It's amazing how much science can tell us about learning better.
But before we get too carried away, maybe we should recap these brain-boosting strategies.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Refresh our memories.
Okay, first up, we talked about active learning. Like, it's not enough to just sit there and take it all in. We have to actually engage with the material, ask questions, try to make connections, you know?
And remember that bridge analogy. The more we use those mental bridges, the stronger they become.
Exactly. Then we said forget cramming, and we talked about the power of spaced repetition. Reviewing the material at different times, that helps solidify things in our brains, makes it easier to remember later on.
And don't forget about those tools like flashcards and apps like Quizlet and Anki. They can be really helpful.
Right. Then we talked about staying focused, which is so hard these days. But we learned about the Pomodoro technique.
Working in those focused bursts with little breaks in between, that can really make a difference.
Work smarter, not harder, right?
Right.
It's about working with our brains, not against them. And speaking of working smarter, we also talked about mixing things up.
Exactly. Using different learning methods. Don't just stick to one way of learning. Explore, experiment, find what works best for you.
Variety is the spice of learning. And then, of course, there's sleep.
Oh yeah, sleep is so important. It's like a superpower for our brains.
It's when everything gets cemented in, organized, you know?
Exactly.
So make sure you're getting enough sleep, especially after a big study session. Give your brain a rest.
Definitely.
And then finally, we talked about the power of curiosity.
Being curious, asking those why and how questions, that can really make a difference.
Let your curiosity lead the way. Learning becomes so much more enjoyable that way.
I agree.
So, listener, what are you going to do differently today to make your learning better and more fun? It doesn't have to be a big change. Even small things can make a big difference.
Maybe you could try a Pomodoro session today, or go back and review something you learned last week.
Or just let yourself be a little more curious about things. Ask questions, explore, see where it takes you.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless.
You know, as we were going through all this, something the video said really struck me. They said that learning doesn't have to be perfect. It's about getting better, trying new
Oh,
things.
yeah, I remember that.
It's about enjoying the process.
It's so true.
I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect learners, to master everything right away.
Yeah, we do.
But learning is a lifelong journey, you know?
It is.
It's full of ups and downs and unexpected things.
It is. It really is.
And the more we can embrace that, the more fun it becomes. It's not about reaching some finish line. It's about always learning and growing.
I think that raises an interesting question. What if we've been approaching this whole learning faster thing wrong?
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
What if, instead of trying to cram more information into our brains faster, we focused on slowing down, like really savoring the process, letting our curiosity guide us?
Wow, I like that. It's like a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, what if the real key isn't about speed, but about how deeply we connect with what we're learning, how much we enjoy it, and how it changes the way we see the world?
That's beautiful. It's not just about taking in information. It's about growing as a person.
Right, so maybe the question isn't, how can I learn faster, but how can I learn more meaningfully?
That's such a good way to put it. And maybe by slowing down, being curious, and really engaging with the material, maybe that's how we actually learn faster.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It is. It's like the less we focus on speed, the faster we actually learn. And it reminds us that learning isn't a race, it's an adventure.
It is.
So let's all embrace our inner explorers, ask questions, be curious, and see where it takes us.
I love that.
Well said. This has been so inspiring. I'm ready to tackle my next learning challenge with, like, a whole new mindset.
Me too.
And to you, listener, we hope this deep dive gave you some great ideas to improve your own learning journey.
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about trying new things, being curious, and finding what works for you.
Exactly. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring.
Until next time, happy learning.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.